Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Welcome to the White Hatter YouTube news show.
I'm Darren.
I'm Brandon. Let's get into some updates from us. First update from us here on YouTube. We're Thinkable Thursday is now live from last Thursday interview that you conducted.
Yeah, with Diana. She's with Cyberwise. She's the founder of Cyberwise. She's also an author who wrote a book, Raising Humans in a Digital World. Just a really good, again, our interview to talk about what's going on in the digital world with our youth, our families, what she sees as the future of where tech is going. Just a really good interview. Just Diana is one of those people who just bring light into darkness, right? She's just one of those people, a real happy person, very joyful. Just a great interview. And again, thank you to Diana for the interview.
Wonderful.
Who do we have this week, by the way?
We have the Australian E-Safety Commissioner. So that will go out on Thursday.
It's going to be that was a good interview as well. So yeah, looking forward to that.
New blog from us about Signal on its updated feature with face blocking technology, which is fantastic given current events.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the more I dug into Signal to write the article, I've downloaded it on my phone and played with it as well, the more I'm liking it, right? We'll talk a little bit more about some of the downsides to full encryption a little bit later, but for those people who are looking for an encrypted piece of messaging software that is free to use right now, and the reason it's free is this is open source and it's funded not for profit, right? So you get no ads, there's no advertisements. It's a really nice app. It's got some really good features to it that I really like a good example. If we're in a school and we need to take a picture of all the kids because of privacy issues, Signal will immediately blur all the faces of the kids, right? It's kind of cool that way. So check it out. Our article is on our blog. Where's our blog?
TheWhiteHatter.ca. The link to that will be below in the description.
There you go. Check it out. We'll talk more about Signal a little bit later, right?
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
Some updates for coming up this week. We got two events coming up this week. Two webinars. One free parenting webinar for parents and caregivers, talking about be careful at what you share, parents and caregivers, and making sure you're not sharing too much about your kids.
I mean, parents, we're proud of our kids. We like to post about our kids online, but I think what needs to be understood is sometimes what's cool and funny today to you as a parent may not be to your child when all of a sudden they're hitting elementary, middle school, and high school. And we'll talk about some of those things and some of the strategies you can put in place to still allow you to do it, but do it in a responsible way with concern for your child's privacy, right? And it's free, so check it out. And the second one?
The second one is our online sexual predation exploitation webinar. That is one of our premium, fully designed webinars, full hour long, plus Q&A, and that will be this week as well.
Yeah, this is an important one. It's backed by popular demand. We did it one already, and we've asked to do it a second time, so we're going to be doing it again. And most recently in Vancouver, we had another incident where a youth was lured online and then sexually exploited online, and it made all the headlines. It's a reality, don't get me wrong, but it's not a rare, it's a rarity. So I don't want people to think that we're going to be talking about it's all fear-based, because it's not, right? But it is a reality that we parents need to be alive to, and we need to talk to our kids about it, and what we can do as parents help minimize the risk, right? So check it out. It's only $5.95, right?
Yeah, Canadian.
Yeah, Canadian, which is like $1 American or something like that.
Let's not get into that. Okay, let's get into some news.
Yeah.
Non-financial news.
Oh, non-financial news. Yeah, good point. What do we got first?
First up is regards to WhatsApp, Telegram. Security researcher was doing some investigation on shared group links. So basically what it came down to is through Google, researcher was able to find 470,000 results for WhatsApp invite links, and allowing anyone to join group chats and access people's phone numbers.
So let me guess. People were sending the links to group chats in a public way, and so therefore it became searchable.
Basically going, here's a group chat, here's a private group chat. In order to have you join the group chat, I got to send you a link. But some people using these links would put them in a public space, which is then accessible and readable and to be analyzed by Google. The security researcher was able to find extremist groups and other groups of not nice nature by using this method. So although they were private groups, the access key to the group door was open.
Right there. Yeah. Be very careful about sending any. This applies to things like Zoom and all the other platforms that are out there, right? Where people are sending access codes and just like, what are we doing, right? Think about that, right? So.
Furthermore, in regards to WhatsApp's big topic
Who owns
today.
WhatsApp?
That is Facebook.
Facebook. Yeah,
Facebook owns WhatsApp.
WhatsApp.
Facebook. So another security researcher warns that Google is indexing phone numbers of WhatsApp users, not by the same method I talked about, but by different methods. So there's a feature in WhatsApp, and it's the click to chat function.
Yes.
Where if we're both WhatsApp users, but you don't know my phone number, because that's how you connect to each other,
Yep.
I could send you a link
Yep.
that then you connect to me.
And let me guess, that link is open.
Yeah, so basically, the Facebook, WhatsApp uses the wa.me domain. So it's right there on the bottom square there. So if I want to create a contact link, what WhatsApp does, it creates a URL link, wa.me, and the phone number of me.
Right.
And that's publicly accessible.
So up until this point, we're hoping that Facebook is going to fix that.
Apparently, according to the researcher, it's a pretty simple fix.
But everything that has been captured, let's say they fix it today.
Okay.
Everything that has been captured up to today is still now searchable.
Through Google, because Google's archived and cached that.
So from an intelligence standpoint, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, it's about, the researcher estimates about 29 to 30,000 individuals are affected by this, but that's still a pretty big number.
Well, let's hope Facebook fix that.
Yeah, it's apparently a pretty easy fix and makes logical sense to me in terms of how to fix it. But it's a matter of if they actually do it. But given this is now public, they probably will. But once the stuff is out there, it's out there.
It's out there. This next one that we're going to talk about, it was only a matter of time, right?
Bogus contact tracing apps developed to steal data.
Go figure. Right? Like a lot of people were talking about this coming up to help deal with the COVID-19 in order to track people and notify people. Well, guess what? The bad guys have figured this out, have basically created phishing attacks. This is almost like a spear phishing attack, right?
No? Spear phishing is more specific and directed towards you.
So what kind of would this be?
Just a general phishing attack.
Just a phishing attack?
Being here's a contact tracing app to help you identify if you've been in contact with someone that has COVID. And basically, it doesn't work that way. It's designed to steal your data off your phone. And who knows what else.
So I guess the moral of the story here is don't download these apps unless it's from a reputable source.
But even then, to watch our past shows,
that's true.
Reputable sources may not have the best security measures in place.
Because they put a lot of these into place very quickly, so we don't know how well secure they are because of zero-day exploits and stuff, right? So even then, we got to be careful, right? But, you know, I'd be thinking twice about downloading any of these type of apps onto your phones, right? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, you can watch our past shows here on YouTube. They're all available, and we talk about all the new official apps coming out and have already been released in terms of some of the security and privacy issues.
Yeah, so just be careful. Yeah, just be careful is the message, right? Careful what you click. What else we got?
Nintendo. So we mentioned this in April on our April show when this first came out. So back in April, Nintendo released a statement saying about 160,000 user accounts on Nintendo were hacked or illegally accessed.
Yeah, I remember that. We talked about that.
And with that, nicknames, dates of births, regions, email addresses may have been viewed by a third party. And if the person used the same password for their other Nintendo accounts, things like full names, genders, and making purchases on the Nintendo account.
Wow.
I mean, here's the thing about Nintendo, what they said.
Hold on. I think we need to put something on before we talk about this, right?
Not quite yet.
Not quite yet? Okay.
So here's what Nintendo said. So basically, the accounts were accessed illegally by some means other than the services that were exposed by hackers. Now, this week, Nintendo came out and said an additional 140,000 accounts were hacked.
So we're now up to 300,000.
About 300,000 accounts. Now,
whatever.
Nintendo says that they themselves weren't hacked directly, but I don't want to be the conspiracy theorist, but I'm just thinking in terms of, okay, so now it's, June now, and now you're adding more accounts to the hacked list.
Right.
And based off their evidence, they determined that they weren't hacked. So basically, you're assuming that about 300,000 people their passwords were guessed.
Yeah, whatever. Whatever.
I'm just trying to understand the whole scope of this in terms of if someone is using a system to guess someone's passwords by just stuffing password credentials and seeing what they get back, because people don't change their passwords.
It's a good thing we're wearing our tinfoil hats right now.
Just being protected.
We
being protected.
We don't want Nintendo getting in there, right?
Yeah, I know.
What's the next one?
So, I mean, basically, you have a Nintendo account, just make sure you change your password.
Change your password.
But, I mean, we'll keep an eye on in terms of what else Nintendo releases.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Next one.
Next one. Microsoft won't sell police facial recognition technology following similar moves by Amazon and IBM. So the last couple of weeks, these companies have stated, we're not going to be selling our facial recognition technology to law enforcement.
Well, good on them, but there are other companies from other countries like Israel that do sell that technology to law enforcement and government agencies and state actors.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch our previous YouTube news shows, we've talked about this in the past in terms of the evidence showing how facial detection technology is not 100%. It's lots of reports talking about how it unfairly targets people of racial minorities, and there's just a whole lot of issues when putting this in, using it as a law enforcement tool.
You know what's
kind
of interesting on this one, Signal, the app that we talked about that I really like, they're now coming out with a face mask, all right, because of COVID and that kind of stuff, that will also help to neutralize facial recognition technology.
Yes. We've talked about all the kind of cool ways in the past about how to beat this stuff.
Have you seen the ones where they have glasses with infrared LED lights on it?
Yes.
So that when the camera looks at it, your face just goes up, like it blurs out, right?
Yes. Or on one of our past shows, there was someone who made like a T-shirt
with license plate numbers.
License plates and faces and such. It's like, yes, we still gotta get one of those.
Yeah, I know.
So I mean, good for these companies.
Yes.
But smaller companies or more specialized companies that don't have as much public pressure on them are still viable options.
I think the way around this is for appropriate legislation to put in place that targets law enforcement and other agencies that have three-letter acronyms to it. So just saying. I mean, there are some points. I mean, facial recognition right now is being used at borders, coming through borders and that kind of stuff. There's some appropriate use to it for sure, but I think we got to be very careful about this. Slippery Slope, Orwellian, 1984.
Yeah.
Did you ever read that book?
Yes, I did in high school.
Yeah, we all did. Good
book.
Yeah.
This story.
Yeah.
In regards to media news and picture manipulation.
Chaz, the Capitol Hill Anonymous Zone in Seattle.
Yeah. So the Seattle Times has called out Fox News for inappropriately superimposing editing photographs onto other photographs. Yeah. So basically what they determined was there are two pictures. You can see them there on the screen. With the top picture is the original picture. The bottom picture is the picture that was posted online on Fox News. Now, apparently, according to the article from the Seattle Times, they've updated the article to include an apology from Fox News. But I think I just want to show this to kind of emphasize, just because it's a picture, it doesn't mean it's more true or accurate than anything else.
Or a video, because of deepfakes, or even text messages, right? Because we've demonstrated how we can spoof text messages that they look like they come from somebody that are saying really horrible things when in fact they're not, they're coming from us. Yeah. Right? So, I mean, again, it comes down to due diligence to a degree. I hate to say this. It pains me to say this. But... But Donald Trump did say, he did say, don't believe everything you see and hear. He did say that publicly, right?
Yes, but also make sure it's on both sides.
I know.
Both sides.
I know, and it pains me to say that, but he was right to a degree, right? Because here's some good examples where, obviously there's photoshopping going on to make it look a lot worse than what it was. And we see this in deep fakes that are becoming a real concern. We talked to the e-safety commissioner about deep fakes.
Yes, we did.
Right? Because she's really all over that. And we talked about that in the interview coming up this Thursday. And then also on the text messaging. I mean, we've investigated a couple of cases now for schools where there was an allegation that this person sent a text to another person to be targeted, when in fact it was the person themselves who was targeting themselves to make them look like the victim and shine the light on somebody else who they didn't like, right?
There once was a time where pictures and videos were the absolute best case evidence.
Yeah, you're right.
Nowadays, no.
Yeah, you gotta do your due diligence. You really do. I mean, the picture on the left there with where it looks like, person's reaching out with the stick there onto the bag. I mean, right away it looks like that picture was imposed, right? The guy with the gun.
Okay.
I mean, just looking at that.
So the photo editors who did this, okay, maybe they're not that great at their job.
No, and then the one on the bottom right, the same thing, right? Like you can see, and we have some basic free software that if you run that through, it would immediately pick up on the fact that it's been altered.
But maybe you're assuming that the average viewer is just quickly scrolling through, right? You just quickly scroll through, you see that. You're not looking at the lighting, the bokeh. You're not looking at all the details.
Oh, the bokeh. What's bokeh?
Blurry
Sounds
background.
like something you eat.
No, it's like
a cheese.
It's just
bokeh cheese.
It's just blurry backgrounds in terms of what's in focus, what's not in focus.
Yeah,
looking at the focus points.
and depending upon what political echo chamber you come from, I mean, it could play right into the emotions of that echo chamber, right? So again, just because you see it, be very careful. I mean, that's a part of what we talk to our teens about is digital literacy, right? Critical thinking, looking at something and asking yourselves questions. Like a good example, the lighting issue. Like the one on the left there, look how bright that person on the left is, but in the background, they're all black. I mean, if you look at the way the lighting is coming, you can just tell that that's an add-on, right? And the same thing on the on the bottom right there.
The smaller one's better than the bigger one, but I mean, it's not great. If you're just quickly scrolling through and you see that can be kind of believable.
Yeah.
If it quickly and not taking time to look at the picture.
I'm surprised nobody did anything because he's wearing the green face mask. So you could probably put some funky things on there. Right? Could think of a green screen, right? Kind of thing. So yeah, you just got to be careful in today's world, right? There's a lot of people, especially because things are so explosive right now around the world, that things like this that are purely being faked can cause an explosion over something that didn't happen. And so we got to be very, very, very careful about it. Yeah, video evidence is important, right? There's no doubt about it. But one has to look at the video evidence first to make sure that it hasn't been tampered with, right? And looking at the hashes and all that kind of stuff to ensure its authenticity, which is so important. Something that we talk to people about all the time.
Yeah.
Good show.
Yeah, that's what we got for today.
Can we talk about Signal for a second? Because there's some things, I really like Signal because it's so encrypted. It's end-to-end encryption. And what does that mean, Brandon?
Basically means on my phone and your phone, anything we send through the app is encrypted in transit and when it gets to us, which means any outside party who doesn't have access to the chat group, who's not a member of the chat group, cannot see or access what it is we're talking about.
Yeah, in fact, if law enforcement serves a warrant on the owners of Signal, the warrant's not going to show the information that seems, it's not going to show anything because it's not collected, right? And so that's a good thing from a privacy standpoint. However, my fear and e-safety commissioner's fear is as well, what about the criminal element that are going to use this? Now, a good example, child pornography, right? Like child pornographers would use Signal and some of its components to interact and share images with one another. And now law enforcement is going to have no access to it. And Signal can't let us know because they won't be able to see it either, right? Because it's fully encrypted. So, I mean, there's a lot of positives to Signal, but there's some negatives as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, but I mean, I guess if law enforcement around the world didn't originally abuse their power to collect everything, they wouldn't be in the situation.
That's a very fair comment.
So I guess they're just
That's a fair
dealing
comment.
with the consequences of their misbehavior.
But then should we go from one extreme to the other extreme, right? Where now the criminal element, unabated, can do whatever they want in their criminal enterprise using an app like Signal without law enforcement being able to enforce what is going on.
Yeah, but should governments that have, say, something like a Patriot Act have complete unrestricted oversight over that?
But what about countries like Canada where we don't have the Patriot Act? So let's say I'm investigating a crime group. For whatever reason, we received information to let us know that they are trafficking in child pornography, right? And in Canada, we have the Canadian Center for Child Protection who runs the Arachnid program, right? That looks for this kind of stuff and gives it to law enforcement to enforce, to search, to arrest, and all that kind of stuff, right? So, and now let's say that criminal element now moves to Signal to do to do their business. Like, how are we now in law enforcement, or how is law enforcement, because I'm retired, how is law enforcement now going to be able to target those groups who are using a product like this?
Yeah, it's going to make it difficult.
It's going to make it impossible, to be quite honest.
From an online perspective, yes.
Do you think that there should be a backdoor encryption key built into these products that law enforcement can get with a warrant? Where it's, see, unlike the US, where judges are elected, here in Canada they are appointed, right?
Yes.
And so they're appointed for life. So you can't. So there are some better checks and balances, in my opinion, here in Canada than the US. So if you have an independent third party, i.e., a judge, and let's make it a Supreme Court judge. Let's not make it a provincial level. Let's make it a Supreme Court judge. Let's put in the legislation that only a Supreme Court justice can now issue a search warrant. If we have that warrant, should companies like Signal and Facebook and all these other ones that are now moving to end-to-end encryption provide law enforcement, if they have that independent third party warrant, i.e. from a Supreme Court judge saying, okay, provide that information, provide it?
Well, who's to say what country is it that should be in charge of regulating a company that operates worldwide?
I agree.
Are you then looking at something more like NATO or?
Yeah, but those a good example, the UN charters. Really, there's a lot of things that Canada does, a lot of countries do that are in violation of the UN Charter for Children, right? But they're not enforced by law enforcement, right? So law enforcement can only enforce the criminal code of Canada. That's what we're
well, if Canada were to do that, then most of the servers aren't here in Canada anyways, they're in the US.
But then, if those services want into Canada, can Canada now block those services from coming into Canada, be used in Canada?
I guess you could, but I guess you'd have to get through our charter.
I know. It's just, I mean, this is interesting. These are good discussions, right? Because
you'd have to go through our charter because people will be like, hey, it's my free speech.
Because you're right. I mean, the reason we've gone this way was because authorities, states, state actors, law enforcement were abusing it, right? Yep. They were abusing it. So as a result of that, these companies are now, because out of demand by the population, saying
consumers want protection.
That's right,
privacy.
They want it. So they've, which I totally get and I understand, right? Like I do believe that especially with these free services that are collecting, because nothing is ever free, right? What they're doing is they're collecting our data and then selling it. That's how they're making their money. So there should be more privacy out there. But WhatsApp is a good example. Like WhatsApp is used by Facebook, fully encrypted, but you'd be fooling yourself to think because it's owned by Facebook that they're not harvesting information in there, right? Like you'd be fooling yourself.
Even companies own checks and balances. We don't know. Right. We don't know.
Signal is a little different though, right? Because it's a not-for-profit open source. It's a little different, and they've had a lot of people look at it and say, yeah, they're not collecting, and they've even had law enforcement serve warrants on them, and they said, yeah, here you go, but there's nothing there because it's fully encrypted. Yep. So now the discussion, and this is where I agree with the Australian E-Commissioner, Julie, that we got, look, are we moving too far to the left now on privacy that we're now giving the benefit of that to the criminal element to financially profit and increase victimization? Interesting, right? Like it, me personally, I still believe that all these companies who are developing this stuff, heaven to God, that Apple can create all these security measures and that kind of stuff to help protect their products. Surely there's a way that they can, and any kind of key can eventually be hacked and stuff. I get it. Unless they have a rotating key, right? But surely to God, these companies could provide some kind of a way with a judicial independent warrant that allows law enforcement to go after these criminal organizations that are targeting people.
Secret FISA courts.
Yeah.
That's still legally a court.
Yeah, it is. But
then the public has no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
So like, even with a court, with a court route, there's still a workaround having a secret court.
But that's the difference between the United States and Canada, Australia, and England.
But then which country is it that should be
Well, it's our country, so we should be able to look at what's going on in our country criminally. So if Facebook, let's say,
but servers are in the U.S.
Oh well, right? Like we can still get warrants to serve on them in the U.S., right? That you can do that, right? There's a mechanism in Canada. It's not a quick one.
That takes like 12 months.
It's changing though, right? They're looking to speed things up
then
between the two countries. Yeah, I know, but it's
where some VPN servers are that's where they're based. Because Malta is like, yeah, do what you want, right?
I know. you know, with convenience comes vulnerability. And I mean, the vulnerability of moving to full encryption is that we're now allowing the criminal element to be fully protected. Like, I already know that Signal is being used by dial-a-dopers, right? Those people who travel around in cars in our cities selling illegal drugs, and they use Signal now to communicate with one another. Because Signal, not only can you use it to send text messages, but you can also use it to send phone messages. You can phone one another using, and it's fully encrypted, right? So even if a law enforcement agency gets a Part 6 warrant for an intercept on telecommunications, they can't intercept it because it's fully encrypted, right? So therefore, we now know that the criminal element is now using this app to fortify their position for the purposes of monetization, right? So it's an interesting debate, right? So again, we went all the way from the right. We've now moved all the way to the left. I think eventually there's going to have to come some kind of a middle ground, because I think eventually what's going to happen...
You're relying on governments to open up their doors to allow what they do in secret to be public.
Yeah, but...
And do you think a government authority would want to do that?
No.
Right?
No.
So, I mean, like... They put it on themselves.
You know, I still think every show I say this. We should dedicate one show. Are you going for your tin hat now? We should dedicate one show where we are, put your tin hat on, yeah, where we just dedicate a topic like this.
Yeah.
Where we can have like a back and forth. We could even invite in a guest to go back and forth to talk about these topics at a deeper level. Because again, I think this has to happen.
Yeah.
That has to happen. So, anyway,
I'm a little bit on the other side.
I know you are, but that's good, right? That's a good. So you believe in full encryption, no access, period.
I can accept the middle ground, but only if government authorities are able to open up the doors, nothing in secret.
But
and that we can keep them in check to make sure they're not abusing that power.
But don't you think that there are some things in government that need to be kept secret for the purposes of security? Like, I
agree. But how do you know that those secret things aren't infringing average people's rights? How do you keep that in check? What do you do to keep that in check? And then there's no way.
You should have oversight, right?
But with oversight then comes openness.
Right, but that oversight with openness should have some kind of caveats attached, where if it's a civilian oversight body looking into it, they should be bound that they shouldn't be making that public unless there's a clear breach. Right.
Okay, and then who gets chosen for the oversight?
I know, it's so deep, right?
Like you could specifically pick people that you know will not basically squeal.
We should apply. We should wear our tin hats and just walk in and go, we're applying for these positions.
Yeah. I mean, I can accept the middle ground, but only if both sides agree to play fair.
I just don't think we can give these, especially those who profit off of child pornography, this safe harbor to use apps like this to continue on with their criminal behavior and profiting off the victimization of young people, right? Like,
some would say what governments have done is also criminal behavior in terms of breaching people's privacy.
I agree.
It's less violent, but it certainly is a criminal behavior.
I know. I don't disagree with you. It's just that when it comes to kids, to me, it's just different, right? I think when it comes to kids, I think everybody around the world kind of feels the same way, right? When it comes to kids, right? So it's just...
But too many people use the argument going, it's for the kids to then use the argument, but then they focus on other things.
Yeah, I know.
Again, how do you keep people in check?
Yeah. Interesting times.
All right. For those of you who are still with us, thank you for joining us into our debate.
Yeah, thank you. I think we should have a debate show where we both dress up as lawyers and stuff. And I know, it'd be kind of cool. Anyways, on behalf of myself, I'm Darren.
And Brandon, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Have a great week.
Bye
now.
Everyone.